My name is Annalisa, and most of my friends call me ZM, and my students call me Miss ZM because that's right, I'm a teacher. Math and science for the win. Now, I'm not one of those scary kinds. I'm one of those teachers that's running around the room constantly trying to make sure that everyone is where they need to be and learning the most that they can, which can be hard, but yes, can also be amazingly rewarding and educational for not only my students, but for myself as well. So I made my own sketch of how the SAMR model applies to my classroom in terms of substitution, augmentation, modification, and redefinition, and decided to focus this video on my Google Earth project. This project is based in a geology unit focused on volcanoes and earthquakes that I teach. It utilizes Google Maps Lite and Google Earth. Each student worked in groups of two. One person had to pin volcanoes and the other had to pin earthquakes in their country or region, which was assigned to them. This allowed for the team to work together while still ensuring accountability. This student, for example, had the country of Japan, and in his reflective blog, he goes through the process of finding the country, pinning it, note those dark blue stars that almost blend in with the ocean in the northeast corner, and then showing you exactly what it looks like when you click on his pin. That's all the data that he collected based on 3 legitimate listed sources. All of these data categories were part of their expectations. Speaking of expectations, in the beginning of the class, students received this rubric, which explained the process for pinning and also for their essay, which would be due at the end of the project. In addition to their ability to use the software, the quality of their pins, their blogs, classroom conversations, and their critical analysis essays around the evolution of their hypothesis, their engagement and understanding was shown to me in their questioning.
Yes. Even though the earthquakes aren't on the coast, they're on the borders of the countries, and that's where the plate tectonics are. So that's where the
Are they always, are plate tectonics always on the borders of the countries?
No.
Okay, but that maybe is a hypothesis. Yeah. And their mind maps at the end of the unit. Now, admittedly, this was my second year doing this project, so I did make some slight adjustments based on 2 things. First, based on the technology changes and new programs available, and second was further scaffolding opportunities. For example, I had class-guided anonymous hypotheses reviews, where I used Padlet, or I had mind maps as a way to synthesize, as opposed to a written blog. I also had a detailed 5-paragraph breakdown of essay expectations, rather than just depending on the rubric in class discussion. The outcome of this project, however, showed once more that my students excelled as geologists at a level appropriate for each of them individually. Everyone in the classroom was excited to learn from and teach one another. Sharing success stories, hypothesizing, and discovering new information was a daily occurrence and proud moment to shine. First, students were assigned a country or region to research. Second, they then had to enter full data for at least 5 pins according to their region. Third, after recording their data, they reflected on where these pins, also known as volcanoes and earthquakes, were in the world. We looked for patterns and hypothesized. Fourth, we imported our map, a KML file, from Google Maps Lite into Google Earth. Fifth, we clicked to add the pins already there in Google Earth for both volcanoes and earthquakes. Sixth, we looked for patterns and hypothesized. Seventh, we searched for and found KML files for plate boundaries and imported it on top of what we already had. Eighth, we looked for patterns, hypothesized a little bit more, and discussed our findings. Ninth, students blogged about the process, wrote a 5-paragraph analysis essay discussing how their hypothesis evolved and how their thinking changed, and at the end of the unit, created a mind map to show their synthesis of the Geology Unit. I am a strong advocate for planning with the end in mind, so I did have a UBD which I used to outline my objectives and standards. But to be honest, I exceeded my goals. The amount of qualitative and quantitative data that I obtained from my students was infinite. They reacted with consistent engagement and excitement. 90 to 100% of the class was engaged 100% of the time. It all started in a conversation with a colleague, the IB biology teacher, which grew to involve our K-12 technology integration specialist, which led to meetings facilitating the ideas, and then me trying to learn the skills, and then for us to all pass it along in a lesson, which led to a second and a third, and before I knew it, this little idea was a unit transformed, and a process transforming, and teaching us all in a very live way every single day. And for that, I am infinitely grateful.
Scientists. Oh, wait, Miss Em, it doesn't look any different. All right. Let's zoom in a little. Oh! Oh, what's this? Raj, International. Raj, International. Top, International. I can zoom out. Let's go over here. Zoom in. Carthage, International. Net, International.